Fans of the Horus Heresy, thank you very much for joining me for my final instalment of how-to videos talking about the construction of the Kharon Pattern Acquisitor for the Sisters of Silence by Forgeworld. Following on from the first couple of videos where I talked about the fit of the hull and the general approach to assembling this particular resin model, I've done most of the work now around building it, so it's essentially completed. So if we have a look at this, so here's the main body. We can see we've got the rear hull attached now. It's all good and filled, and that's all got a good alignment. Got the rocket launchers on, done a bit of filling around the front. The air scoops in. All this yellow stuff is milliput filler. We've got some 2x8mm neodymium magnets mounted here in the pre-cut recesses, and that allows us to take the nose, and there you go, got an attachment, and then the open nose, and likewise it fits on nicely. So I'm happy with that one. This one, the closed nose, is, as you see there, giving it a little shake. That's not quite a strong enough hold yet, so I'm going to put a magnet in here and in here, there, just to make this one a stronger attachment point, because that's quite a heavy piece, and even with, as I say, these N52 grades, so really strong neodymium rare earth magnets, it's not quite a strong enough attachment point. There's a few bits of filling to sand off on this, but generally it's gone together pretty well. There's a few bits here I've not yet attached, the exhaust and the two engines. The engines I won't be fitting until I actually paint it, because it's quite a restricted area at the back in terms of access. If I just test locate one of these, I'll show you why. There you go. So it's very difficult to get in and paint those, I think. I'll pin them, so I was going to pin them anyway, I think, and then I'll just do the painting and then attach them. I've not attached the exhaust yet. As I discussed in my original videos, that was to help me align this and do the filling. Now, there's another thing that's left to do on this, and that's around the final alignment. You may remember I said I might need to do some work to get all this to line up, and actually, as you can see, I've got a really good alignment on this rear hull piece in the end. And even here, because these intakes didn't line up particularly well, this bit to this bit, I thought these were a bit smaller than this. However, it wasn't the case. And what happened was, when I was fitting this, I had to pinch the bottom of this arch in a bit to get it all to line up here. And having done that, I then realized that the fit wasn't quite right up here. And let me do a little diagram to explain that further. So I have a bit of paper and a pen. Those of you who watch the 8th edition news flashes, this may be a little bit of a trip down memory lane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a schematic representation of what the form of the arch was like when it was received. It was kind of like a bit like this. So I've exaggerated that to illustrate what I've done. It was somewhat pinched in. It was quite a narrow, sharp archway. What I actually ended up doing was heating it up and bending it so it looked a bit more like this. So what I did was I kind of bent the top out and then bent the sides around a bit more rather than a sharper arch. And it was the fact that the top didn't have enough curvature on it that I wasn't getting a good alignment on these two air intakes to start with. Having done that, it's then lined up really well. That was an example of one of the sort of how these resin models can sometimes be a bit like a puzzle, and you've got to bit by bit tease out misalignments. Sometimes you correct one misalignment and then it helps you realize what another misalignment is, and then you go back and you fix that, and gradually you get there. So that's how I figured out getting the air intake alignment around the rear hull and the main hull all well aligned. Now, there was a slight issue with that, I found out once I put it together finally. Because I pinched in these parts to get this bit to all line up properly, plan view, it then pushed out this section here, and you can, this is supposed, I think, from a top view, this is supposed to be like a smooth line, but it's actually bulged out here, and that's because it's pinched in, and the material's just responded by bowing out here a bit in effect. So as a final piece of manipulation on this model, what I'm going to try to do, and we're going to do it in this video, I'm going to heat this rear hull section up with hot water, and then I'm going to attempt to tease out this lump in the line, shall we say, so it all ends up looking smooth. So that's the idea. I'm not sure if it'll work, because I suspect as well as pushing this in, this needs to go up a bit. So we'll have to see if that'll work. Sticking with the theme of props, we've got a Pyrex jug, and I'm going to put some freshly boiled hot water in that to heat this up, and then I'm going to bend it by hand. I'll go get the hot water. Okay, I've got the hot water. There's one other thing, and this is just a bowl of of cold water. The reason I've got that is once I've got the position right, having heated the part up, I can then, shall I say, dunk it or quench it into this cold water to freeze a resin in position. Because with large parts, it takes them a long time to cool down. And sometimes I found that you can lose your position if you wait for it to cool naturally, even when you're holding it. Right, let's pour out the hot water. So I'm going to fill this really high up. There you go, allow a little bit of displacement. Clearly, when you're dealing with almost boiling hot water, do be mindful of the environment around you. Don't leave it lying around if you've got pets or children. I always turn mine out as soon as I've done. My cheeselets are out at the moment, so I don't have to worry about them, so I'm fine. So yeah, so what I've done is I've immersed the rear hull of the Kharon Acquisitor in the hot water, and that is now softening the material. Now, by doing this with hot water, I can just heat up the rear hull. I don't heat up any other parts of the model. All right, so let's just see if we've got any movement in that now. Yeah, we have, yeah. So if you can see what I'm going to do, I'm going to try pinch. I'll try pinch it in. Not quite soft enough there, yeah. I think we might need a little bit more heat, so I'm going to put it back in. Have to immerse it a bit more, I think. And this is what you find when you're doing heat bending on models. Sometimes you heat it up, you bend it, and it doesn't go quite how you wanted it, so you just got to go back and do it again. And it's dead easy, it's not difficult. And you can always just heat it up, let it return to its original position, and then go at it again. Resin is quite a forgiving material in this regard. Okay. So that's it. So now got to make sure everything else ends up in the right place. It might be a little bit tricky for you to see exactly what I'm doing because you'll be getting some barrel distortion from the camera. Hopefully you can maybe appreciate the general way I'm just manipulating the part. And now it's starting to cool, but I've got the position I want, so I'm just going to put it in the cold water to freeze it to do the trick. All the cold water does is just lower the temperature a bit. So let's dry this off. I've never actually measured what the temperature is on resin for being able to manipulate it, or certainly the brand that Forgeworld uses. Probably guessing it must be around 70 or 80 degrees centigrade. Right, so now let's look at this. So now I'm really happy with this. I've got a lovely smooth line. There's a little bit of sanding to do down here, just to get the, maybe a touch more filling, just to get that really true and lined up. But otherwise there's a nice smooth line on there. And this side's even better. Nice, smooth, continuous line. If we look at it from the side, it all looks good. Look at it from the rear, ditto. And look at it from the other side. Yeah, it's the same. That's perfect. That was just the result I was hoping to get, and yeah, we've got there. That pretty much concludes what I'm going to do video-wise on the build of the Kharon Acquisitor. I've got a bit more work to do in terms of putting this together to get it ready for the final model and rules review. It might be after the weekend actually, because it's been a busy week and I'm away this weekend for a few days, so I won't have as much time. So I hope you've enjoyed this latest view on how I tackle the build and assembly of a resin kit. As always, if you've got any questions or observations, I'll be fascinated to hear about them in the comment section. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.